America did not answer the Cold War with fear. It answered with engineers, steel, titanium, secrecy, and machines so advanced that even today, they look like they came from another century. At a time when the Soviet Union tried to hide its missile sites, its nuclear progress, and its military secrets behind the largest closed border on Earth, the United States built aircraft that could fly higher, faster, and deeper into danger than almost anything the world had ever seen. This was not just about building a plane. It was about proving that American industry, American intelligence, and American risk-taking could reach places the enemy believed were untouchable. In the early years of the Cold War, information was not just useful. Information could prevent a nuclear war. Washington needed to know what the Soviet Union was building, where its missile sites were located, how quickly its nuclear forces were growing, and whether Soviet leaders were telling the truth about their military strength. But the Soviet Union was not an open society. Foreign inspectors were not welcome. Reliable human intelligence was difficult, dangerous, and often incomplete. So the United States turned to the sky, and for a time, the U-2 spy plane seemed like the perfect answer. A thin-winged aircraft designed to fly so high that Soviet defenses would have trouble reaching it. For several years, the U-2 gave American leaders something they desperately needed: eyes over places that no American soldier, diplomat, or inspector could safely enter. It flew above Soviet territory carrying cameras, gathering intelligence, and helping Washington separate real threats from propaganda. In a world where one wrong assumption could lead to catastrophe, those photographs mattered. They helped American officials understand the balance of power more clearly. But there was a dangerous assumption behind the U-2 program. The aircraft depended heavily on altitude for survival. If the Soviets found a way to track it and hit it, the entire logic of the mission would collapse. On May 1st, 1960, that collapse came. CIA pilot Francis Gary Powers was flying a U-2 over Soviet territory when his aircraft was shot down near Sverdlovsk by a Soviet surface-to-air missile. Powers survived, parachuted to the ground, and was captured. The wreckage of the aircraft was recovered. The cameras were found. The mission was exposed. What had been a secret contest in the sky suddenly became a global diplomatic crisis. For the United States, the lesson was brutal and immediate. Flying high was no longer enough. The next reconnaissance aircraft would need to do more than climb above danger. It would need to outrun it. That problem pushed the United States toward one of the most extreme aircraft programs in history, Project Oxcart and the Lockheed A-12. Before the world knew the Blackbird name, before the SR-71 became an icon, the CIA and Lockheed's Skunk Works were already working on an aircraft that seemed almost impossible for its time. It had to fly above 80,000 feet. It had to travel at more than 3 times the speed of sound. It had to survive heat, stress, radar, missile threats, and secrecy so intense that even moving the aircraft became a covert operation. The A-12 was not designed like a normal aircraft because it was not being asked to do a normal job. The first A-12, known as Article 121, was built and ground-tested in Burbank in early 1962. But there was a problem. The aircraft was too secret to simply fly to the test site, and it was too large to be carried on a normal cargo plane. So the machine that would later become part of aviation legend had to begin its journey in one of the most unusual ways imaginable: disassembled, hidden inside a huge crate, and moved by truck under heavy security. During the night of February 26, 1962, a specially designed trailer carried the fuselage away from the Skunk Works toward a secret Nevada facility. The crate was so large that road signs had to be removed, trees had to be trimmed, and road banks had to be leveled. The wings were shipped separately and attached later at the test site. That image tells you almost everything about the world that created the A-12. This was an aircraft so sensitive that its first journey had to happen on the road, at night, under escort, inside a box wide enough to reshape the route around it. It was not just an airplane being delivered. It was a national secret moving through the dark. Inside that crate was an answer to a Soviet challenge. Inside that crate was a bet that American engineering could produce something fast enough, high enough, and advanced enough to restore the reconnaissance advantage that had been shaken by the U-2 disaster. But legends rarely begin smoothly. In late April 1962, Lockheed test pilot Lou Schalk took the first A-12 into the air during an unofficial and unannounced first flight. The aircraft barely flew. It traveled less than 2 miles at an altitude of about 20 feet before serious lateral oscillations made the situation dangerous. Kelly Johnson, the legendary Skunk Works engineer behind the aircraft, later described the movement as horrible to see. Schalk did not circle around for a normal landing. Instead, he put the aircraft down on the dry lake bed beyond the end of the runway. When the nose of the A-12 emerged from the dust, Johnson's angry voice came over the radio with a question that captured the tension of the moment. "What in hell, Lou?" The next attempt did not become perfect either. Schalk flew again, this time keeping the landing gear down just in case something went wrong. The takeoff looked good, but once the aircraft climbed to about 300 feet, pieces of titanium began coming off the aircraft. These were not minor cosmetic details to the men watching from the ground. This was the only A-12 built so far, an aircraft at the center of one of the most important secret programs in the United States, and it was shedding parts in flight. Technicians spent days finding and reattaching the pieces. Yet even through the problems, Johnson saw something important. The aircraft's basic stability was not the issue. The wild machine could be tamed. On April 30th, 1962, Article 121 made its first official flight. Senior Air Force officers and CIA executives watched as Schalk took the aircraft into the sky for 59 minutes, reaching 30,000 feet and just under 400 miles per hour. This was still far from the terrifying performance the aircraft would later achieve. But the flight mattered because it proved that the program was alive. Schalk reported that the aircraft responded well and was extremely stable. Kelly Johnson considered it one of the smoothest official first flights of any aircraft he had designed or tested. Just days later, on May 4th, Article 121 went supersonic, reaching Mach 1.1 at 40,000 feet. The Black Project was no longer just an idea inside engineering drawings and intelligence briefings. It was flying. The A-12 was built around extremes. At the speeds it was designed to reach, the aircraft had to survive heat that would punish ordinary materials. Its skin, structure, fuel system, engines, cameras, and electronic systems all had to work in an environment most aircraft would never experience. The mission was not simply to fly fast for the sake of speed. The mission was to compress the enemy's reaction time. A Soviet radar station might detect something. A command center might try to understand it. A missile crew might attempt to respond. But an aircraft moving at more than 3 times the speed of sound did not give the enemy a comfortable window to think, decide, launch, and intercept. Speed itself became a defense. That is what made the A-12 and later the SR-71 so different from ordinary military aircraft. They were not designed to fight their way through enemy airspace with guns or bombs. They were designed to enter danger, collect intelligence, and survive through altitude, speed, electronic systems, and engineering precision. In the Cold War, a photograph could be as strategically important as a weapon. A clear image of a missile site, a radar installation, or a military facility could change what presidents believed, what generals planned, and what diplomats could prove. The aircraft did not need to destroy a target to change history. It only needed to see what the enemy wanted, hidden. The SR-71, developed from the A-12 family, would become the more famous Blackbird. It entered service with the U.S. Air Force in the 1960s and became one of the most recognizable reconnaissance aircraft ever built. From around 80,000 feet, it could survey enormous areas of the Earth's surface in a single hour. It could fly at Mach 3+, over 2,000 miles per hour, with a ceiling above 85,000 feet. To the public, it looked like science fiction. To American planners, it was a strategic tool. To hostile air defense networks, it was a moving problem that was extremely difficult to solve. For Soviet planners, aircraft like these created a painful reality. The Soviet Union had built one of the most serious air defense systems in the world because it understood that control of the sky mattered. But the Blackbird family forced air defense crews to confront a target that lived at the edge of physics and timing. It was not enough to know something was there. You had to detect it, track it, identify it, calculate its path, authorize a response, launch a missile, and place that missile where the aircraft would be, all while the target was moving at extreme altitude and extreme speed. The plane did not give the enemy much time to make mistakes. It made time itself part of the American advantage. This is why the story is bigger than one aircraft. The A-12 and SR-71 represented a national system capable of turning fear into engineering. After the U-2 was shot down, the United States could have accepted that manned overflight reconnaissance had reached its limit. Instead, American engineers, intelligence officers, test pilots, metallurgists, camera designers, and military planners pushed the limit forward. They built machines that demanded new materials, new manufacturing methods, new flight procedures, and new ways of thinking about survival. The result was not just a faster airplane. It was a statement about what the United States could do when secrecy, money, urgency, and technical ambition were focused on a single problem. The irony is that the A-12 began as something fragile and uncertain. It was trucked through the night in pieces. Its early flights were dangerous. It wobbled. It shed titanium parts. And it nearly embarrassed the men who had promised something revolutionary. But that is what makes the story more powerful. American technological superiority did not appear magically. It was built through risk, failure, correction, and persistence. Before the Blackbird became untouchable in popular memory, it had to survive the dust of a dry lake bed, the anger of Kelly Johnson, the nerves of Lou Schalk, and the brutal reality that revolutionary machines often begin as problems no one has solved yet. By the time the Blackbird became a symbol of American reconnaissance power, the message was clear. The Soviet Union could build missiles. It could build radar networks. It could surround its secrets with distance, borders, and military defenses. But the United States had built something that challenged the assumption that those secrets were safe. The Cold War was not always fought with armies crossing borders. Sometimes it was fought by a pilot in a pressure suit, a camera behind a quartz window, a radar warning receiver in a cockpit, and an aircraft moving so fast that the enemy's best chance was often to watch it leave. The U-2 incident proved that the old answer was no longer enough. The A-12 proved that America was already searching for a harder answer. The SR-71 proved that the answer could become legendary. Together, they tell one of the most remarkable stories of the Cold War, a story of danger, intelligence, secrecy, and engineering at the edge of the possible. The Soviets tried to close the sky. The United States built an aircraft that made the sky wider,